Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling clinical hypnosis. You know, it often gets wrapped up in this historical mystique, stage shows, and that sort of thing.
Right? The entertainment angle.
Exactly. But underneath all that, there's actually a really solid scientific basis for using it in therapy, for helping people change.
Absolutely. And that's what we're focusing on today, the evidence-based side of things. Forget the swinging watches for a minute.
Yeah.
We want to unpack the new science, how it works, where it's useful. We pulled together quite a bit of research for this.
Good. So if you've ever been curious, maybe wondered if hypnosis is, well, more than just magic tricks, you're definitely in the right place. But we're sticking to the clinical stuff, the research-backed applications.
Okay, so where do we start? Defining it seems like the first step.
Yeah, let's nail that down. What is clinical hypnosis officially?
Well, the American Psychological Association, their Division 30, gives a pretty standard definition. They call it a state of consciousness involving focused attention and reduced peripheral awareness, characterized by an enhanced capacity for response to suggestion.
Okay, that's a bit dense. Let's break it down. Focused attention, reduced awareness of other stuff, and being more open to suggestions. Is that the gist?
That's basically it. The key parts are really zoning in your focus and becoming more receptive to helpful ideas or directions.
And people debate whether it's like a totally separate state of mind, right? Like being asleep or awake.
Yeah, that's been a long-running discussion. Is it a unique, altered state, or more just a shift in how you're using your attention? Honestly, the jury's still out on the exact classification, but what pretty much everyone agrees on is that it definitely involves intense focus and that openness to suggestion. That's the practical part that matters for therapy.
Right, the outcome. So it's about directing that spotlight of attention. How does the suggestion part actually work then? How do you get someone there?
It usually starts with what's called a hypnotic induction. Think of it as the guided instructions, the spoken prompts a therapist uses to help you shift your focus inward, relax, and get into that concentrated state.
Okay.
Once you're in that focused state, the therapist introduces therapeutic suggestions. These aren't commands, but more like carefully worded ideas tailored to what you want to achieve, managing pain, maybe reducing anxiety, changing a habit.
That makes sense. But how is that different from something like, say, meditation or mindfulness? They involve focus, too.
That's a really good question and a key difference. Both use focused attention, definitely, but mindfulness is generally about accepting the present moment, just noticing thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Okay, non-judgmental awareness.
Exactly. Hypnosis, though, usually has a specific goal. It uses that focused state to actively guide you toward a desired change or outcome. Like one researcher pointed out, meditation might help you accept your pain, while hypnosis might suggest ways to feel less pain or cope differently. It's more change-oriented.
Got it. Acceptance versus active change. That's clear. And there's some really cool research that shows just how powerful suggestion can be in this state. That postcard experiment, for instance.
Oh yeah, Barnier's study. That was fascinating. Basically, she had two groups mailing her postcards daily. One group was just asked to do it, like a normal favor.
A social request.
Right. The other group got a post-hypnotic suggestion to mail them. Now, the interesting thing wasn't that they mailed them, both groups did, pretty reliably.
Okay, so compliance was similar. What was different?
It was their internal experience of doing it. The group who were just asked felt like, okay, I'm choosing to do this favor. It felt voluntary.
Makes sense. And the hypnosis group?
They described it completely differently. They felt this compelling urge, almost like the action was happening to them, less like something they were consciously deciding to do each time.
Wow. So it felt involuntary.
Almost, yeah. And that highlights a core part of hypnosis, that temporary shift in the sense of agency, feeling less like you're effortfully making yourself do something. That can make change feel, well, easier sometimes, less like a battle.
Taking the struggle out of it, maybe. That's powerful. What about the Stroop effect study? That's a classic psychology test.
Right, the Stroop test, where you have color words printed in the wrong color ink, like BLE printed in red ink.
Yeah.
And you have to name the ink color, not read the word.
Yeah, it trips you up because reading is so automatic.
Exactly. Creates that interference. Well, Amir Raz and his team showed, and it's been replicated, that for people who are highly hypnotizable, a post-hypnotic suggestion.
A suggestion given during hypnosis to have an effect later.
Correct. A suggestion like, you will only see the color of the letters. The word itself will seem like gibberish.
Yeah.
That could basically eliminate the Stroop interference. They could just smoothly name the ink colors without the conflict.
Whoa. So the suggestion could override a really fundamental automatic brain process.
That's what it looks like. It's a striking example of top-down control, how a focused mental state and suggestion can influence even basic cognitive functions.
That leads nicely into Spiegel's work on perception, right? Suggesting people see color where there isn't any.
Yeah, that's another level. They gave highly hypnotizable people the suggestion to perceive color in grayscale
So
images.
did they just say they saw color?
Well, they reported seeing color, but the really compelling part was the brain scans. They actually saw increased activity in the color processing areas of the visual cortex.
No way. So the brain reacted as if color was actually there.
Precisely. Even though the input was just black and white, it suggests hypnosis can directly influence sensory processing at a neural level, not just our interpretation.
Okay, that's pretty mind-bending. Now, this idea of being highly hypnotizable keeps coming up. Is it like a trait or some people just better at it?
It definitely seems to be. Hypnotizability is measurable, and it varies a lot. Think of it like a bell curve.
A normal distribution.
Exactly. You've got maybe 10–20% of people who are very highly responsive, another 10–20% who are, not very responsive at all, and most folks fall somewhere in the middle.
So it's not just yes or no, you're hypnotizable or you're not.
Not at all. And there are tools clinicians use to get a sense of where someone falls, like the hypnotic induction profile or the Elkins hypnotizability scale.
Okay.
But the crucial thing, and researchers like Elkins really stress this, is that most people, even those lower on the scale, can still get some benefit. It might just take more sessions or maybe slightly different techniques.
That's good to know. So it's worth trying even if you think you might be resistant. Is there any sense of why people differ, like in the brain?
Yeah, there's some really interesting work on that, particularly from Spiegel's lab. Again, they found that highly hypnotizable individuals tend to show stronger connections, better communication between certain brain networks.
Which now?
Specifically, the central executive network that's involved in like planning and focus, and the salience network, which helps us figure out what's important to pay attention to.
Okay, so the focus network and the what's important network talk to each other better.
Kind of, yeah. And during hypnosis, these networks seem to coordinate more, while another network, the default mode network, often linked to mind-wandering or self-reflection, tends to quiet down.
Ah, so less internal chatter, more focused attention. Makes sense. That would help with following suggestions.
It does. And there's also a link to cognitive flexibility.
Meaning?
People higher in hypnotizability seem to be less prone to perseveration, that's getting stuck on old ways of thinking or doing things. They seem a bit more adaptable, more open to taking in new information or perspectives.
Interesting. So it's not just passive suggestibility, it's maybe linked to a more flexible mindset too.
Seems that way. Although some researchers point out it could be a double-edged sword. High hypnotizability might also correlate with tendencies towards dissociation or certain mental health vulnerabilities, possibly because subjective experience is more malleable.
Right, a potential downside to consider. Okay, let's pivot to the practical side. Where is hypnosis actually being used effectively? Pain management seems like a big one.
Oh, absolutely. The evidence there is really quite strong. Multiple big reviews, meta-analyses have looked at tons of studies and consistently find that hypnosis provides significant pain relief for many people.
Especially the more hypnotizable ones.
Yeah, they tend to get the most benefit, but many others do too. There's great work with cancer patients, for instance, showing it helps with pain from treatments, even things like joint pain. And it seems to work across different groups of people.
That's huge.
Yeah.
What else? Hot flashes, that came up in the research too.
Yes. Dr. Elkins did a key study with menopausal women. The group that got clinical hypnosis had a really significant drop in hot flashes compared to a control group. We're talking like a 74% reduction based on what the women reported.
Wow, that's a big number.
And importantly, they also measured it physiologically with skin conductance monitors and saw a major reduction there too, around 57%. So it wasn't just subjective feeling, there were objective changes.
Impressive. Any other areas showing promise?
Definitely. Research suggests it can be helpful for sleep problems, improving sleep quality. There's work showing potential benefits for depression, often alongside other therapies. And then there's stress management, anxiety, and even helping people quit smoking. The list is growing.
It's quite a range, but it's usually used with other therapies, right? Not just hypnosis on its own.
That's a really critical point. Most experts see hypnosis as an adjunctive therapy. It boosts other treatments.
Like adding a turbocharger to CBT or something?
Exactly. Studies show that combining hypnosis with cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, can lead to better results for things like depression, pain, and anxiety than CBT alone. It seems to amplify the effects.
Okay, so it enhances existing therapies. We touched on brain networks involved in hypnotizability, but what about during the hypnotic state itself? What's going on neurologically?
It's complex, partly because hypnosis can involve so many different experiences, relaxation, imagery, pain reduction, etc. So there isn't one single hypnosis spot in the brain.
Makes sense.
But neuroimaging is showing patterns. We see involvement of those networks. We mentioned central executive, salience, default mode. The lingual gyrus involved in mental imagery often pops up too.
And the default mode network quieting down seems important.
Yeah, the idea is that reducing that sort of internal self-monitoring or mind-wandering might create space for new suggestions and perspectives to take hold more easily. Less resistance from old patterns.
Interesting. And there's even work trying to induce brain states similar to highly hypnotizable people using TMS.
Right. That upcoming study using transcranial magnetic stimulation sounds fascinating. The idea is, can we use TMS to temporarily nudge brain activity patterns to resemble those seen in high hypnotizables? And would that make someone more responsive to hypnotic suggestions for therapy?
That's really pushing the boundaries. Very cool.
Yeah, it could potentially open up ways to help more people benefit, even those initially less responsive.
And finally, it feels like hypnosis is becoming, well, more accessible. It's not just locked away in clinics anymore.
Definitely. We're seeing the rise of hypnosis apps, things like Reverie, Finito, Evia, Nerva. They offer guided sessions for sleep, stress, pain, IBS, making it available on your phone.
Bringing it to the masses, in a way.
And there's also a push for more therapists to actually get trained in clinical hypnosis. Given the evidence base now and its safety profile when done properly, it's being recognized as a valuable skill to add to the toolkit.
So it seems like clinical hypnosis is really shaking off the old stage persona and stepping into the light as a serious science-backed tool.
I think that's fair to say. It's about focused attention, harnessing suggestion for positive change. And the research is increasingly showing how and why it works for a whole range of issues.
Okay, so summing up. Clinical hypnosis, it's grounded in science, uses focused attention and suggestion, and has solid evidence for things like pain, hot flashes, and boosting other therapies like CBT for depression and anxiety.
And while responsiveness varies, most people can benefit to some degree. It's not some mystical power. It's a skill and a state anyone can potentially learn to use.
Right. So maybe a thought to leave our listeners with, think about how deliberately shifting your own focus and maybe being a bit more open to new ways of thinking or feeling could actually influence your experiences day to day.
Yeah, moving beyond the myths and just considering the power of your own attention.
Click like and subscribe to the Unlock Your Mind channel.